Okay, ladies and gents, here we go. Okay, ladies and gents, here we go. I am Warwolf. This is the road to WrestleMania. And pop culture, news, and a little bit of everything else. If anybody happens to hear my fan in the background, please let me know. I'm trying to make sure that it's not too much in the sound here, simply because it's around 68, 70 degrees. And if it's too loud or if it's annoying anybody, let me know. I'll turn it off. So, we are now on the so-called road to WrestleMania's final stop, which, of course, is WrestleMania itself. So, let's take a quick look and do a rundown of the matches we know so far. So, let's take a look here. We know, first off, that they're splitting the show into two nights. This is much like what's been going on with Wrestle Kingdom over in New Japan Pro Wrestling, for the last, I don't know, decade plus. So here we go. Now, these are in no particular order, but we know these are the nights that they're appearing on. Night one, we have Sasha Banks versus Bianca Bel Air. That's going to be for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Bobby Lashley with MVP in his corner will take on Drew McIntyre in the singles match for the WWE title. We'll get back to that in a little bit. Bad Bunny. Yes, folks, the rapper Bad Bunny with Damian Priest will take on The Miz with John Morrison in his corner. Then, of course, we have night two, Roman Reigns with Paul Heyman versus Edge for the Universal Championship. We know Asuka will take on Rhea Ripley for the Raw Women's title. And the Fiend, Bray Wyatt, yes, he did come back, folks. We'll talk about him in just a few minutes. Will take on Randy Orton. And we have two matches that we don't know what night they're going to be on. And that's the New Day taking on AJ Styles and Omos, whatever the hell his name is, for the Raw Tag Team titles. And then we have Braun Strowman versus Shane McMahon. So let's take this from the top. For those people who did see WrestleMania's final stop on the road to WrestleMania itself, referring to Fastlane, we got a couple things. First off, I pretty much predicted almost the entirety of what was going to happen, not necessarily with 100% accuracy. For example, I fully expected certain things to go a different way in some cases, but I pretty much did predict almost everything 100% accurately. The one thing that I got wrong was that Shane McMahon was going to basically fake an injury and try to put Elias with Jackson Riker, I think his name is, in his corner. Now, Braun still ended up coming out on top. So, yes, I did predict Braun was going to win that match. It looks like they're carrying this right on to WrestleMania, as I already said. It's going to be Shane versus Braun Strowman at WrestleMania 37. We don't know what night it's going to be held on. I predicted the return of The Fiend. And yes, I fully ended up being right about this. I also ended up being right about the fact that there was no actual interaction between Randy Orton and Alexa Bliss in the so-called intergender match. They literally did not touch each other at all, with the exception of the moment when Alexa Bliss, I almost said Alexa Bliss. I don't know what a Bliss is. Alexa Bliss effectively covered Randy Orton in one of the most exceedingly sexual things I've ever seen on the show. I mean, I'm sorry. It literally looked like she was straddling the man sexually. So there's that. Now, I said that if Roman Reigns was medically cleared to wrestle for WrestleMania, that he would go over. I expected that there was going to be involvement by Jay Uso. I expected there was going to be involvement by Edge, but I did not know what form that involvement was going to take. So, again, I did predict this accurately in that both men were involved. What I did not predict was the way it went down. Basically, Jay Uso, as we expected, did pop up, and I think the idea was he was trying to get Roman disqualified so that, Daniel Bryan could technically win the match, but at the same time would lose the title shot simply because champion's advantage means that the title can't change hands on a count out or disqualification. Well, that's not what happened. He did get involved, and actually the referee took a bump, something you don't see too often these days in WWE. I think the last time we'd seen one was at the Royal Rumble, and before that, I think it had been a couple of years since the last major ref bump, at least that I can recall. Edge got involved. Apparently, his position as the special guest enforcer did include the ability to count pinfalls, and he very nearly counted 3 on, I believe it's Roman Reigns. It's been a couple of days, so I didn't memorize this beat for beat, but he did get involved. I think it's Roman Reigns had gotten the pin on Daniel Bryan, so Roman's got the pin. Edge makes the 3 count, but only gets 2. And then Edge accidentally gets hit in the face with a chair as a result of Daniel Bryan utilizing the chair that Jay Uso had introduced into the ring. Edge then proceeds to completely snap. And let me put it out this way, folks. I think we're about to see either Edge versus Daniel Bryan as an upcoming feud, or we're going to see Edge versus Roman as an ongoing feud, with Daniel Bryan versus Jay Uso as a secondary feud that will align with that story. It could also go the other way around. So let me break this down for you. Shortly after that initial ref bump and shortly after Edge's chair shot, what ended up happening was Daniel Bryan actually did what he said he was going to do. He got Roman Reigns into the yes lock, and Roman tapped. He was in the move for a good, 2-3 minutes. Edge was still down. The referee that was assigned to the match was straight up, knocked out, at least storyline wise. Roman starts tapping. And the next thing we see is Edge taking a chair to both Roman and Daniel Bryan. And then literally screams, "This is mine," walks out of the ring, walks out of the arena, and another referee shows up in time for Roman to snag the 1-2-3 off of, I believe it was a spear. I got to double check that. It was either the spear or it was the Superman punch. Either way, going into SmackDown this Friday, which of course that's tomorrow, that is going to be very, very interesting, to say the least. I'm very curious to see what Daniel Bryan's going to have to say about Edge. I'm very curious what he's going to have to say about Jay Uso. We know that Roman will try to downplay the fact that he tapped. I know Bryan is going to bring that up at least once. And that's probably going to be a sticking point of contention, especially if we go from Edge versus Roman Reigns to Edge versus Daniel Bryan, or possibly to Daniel Bryan versus Roman Reigns if he gets past Edge at WrestleMania 37. However, given the build-up to Edge's return, and of course, WrestleMania 37 being what it is, I do believe we're going to see Edge take on Roman Reigns and win, but I do believe that's going to lead eventually to Daniel Bryan versus Edge. Now, on the off chance that that doesn't end up being where we go, one of the things I think we're going to see for WrestleMania, and I think we're going to get this announced tomorrow, is we are going to get Daniel Bryan versus Jay Uso. He can't get his hands on Edge right now, and he can't get his hands on Roman unless they turn it into a triple threat match, which is another way they could go. But I do think we're going to see Daniel Bryan versus Jay Uso, and then we're going to see one or both of those men get involved in the Universal title match between Edge and Roman Reigns. So that's where I'm predicting for that. So let me give you my predictions for WrestleMania. Sasha Banks versus Bianca Bel Air. I've said this before. I don't like that they basically recycled the Kurt Hennig gimmick of Mr. Perfect and gave it to Bianca Bel Air, because I don't really believe she's got the charisma to pull that off. She's definitely got talent. She's definitely got improving microphone skills, but I don't see her as being able to pull off this particular gimmick. She's starting to grow on me, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. I fully believe they're going to give the belt to Bianca, but I think this is the beginning of a long-running feud between her and Sasha Banks that could go as long as SummerSlam. So that's where I'm going with that. Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre. Now, there was a stipulation added to this match. And I've got to say, I'm a little confused because it seems like the writing on Monday Night Raw kind of went sideways here. Now, on Monday Night Raw, this past Monday, we saw Bobby Lashley versus Sheamus, and we saw Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin getting involved in the match. Now, bear in mind, Sheamus, just 24 hours earlier, had gone through a hellacious match with Drew McIntyre. And again, I predicted this thing was going to be the show stealer of the night for Fastlane. I was absolutely right on this one. I mean, don't get me wrong. The title match between Bryan and Reigns was fine. It was decent, wrestling. I like the psychology behind it. But holy crap, the no-holds-barred match. I mean, again, I said this. If you thought the no DQ match from about 2-3 weeks ago was cool, wait till you see what they do at the pay-per-view, and they went all over the arena. Busted at least one set of monitors in the so-called Thunderdome stands. I believe Sheamus came away with either a massive cut or a massive burn on his back. I mean, somebody take a look at that and tell me which one they think it is, if they've gotten a chance to see it on pay-per-view or on WWE Network or Peacock or whatever the hell it's streaming on now. Either way, really fantastic match. And I thought it was going to be the show stealer of the night, and it really was. So now we got Bobby Lashley taking on Sheamus 24 hours later. And when the other two members of the Hurt, because MVP's been on like a crutch or a cane or something for the last little while there. I don't know what's going on there. They ended up getting involved a couple of times in the match, never physically. And Bobby Lashley did ultimately get the win. However, afterwards, he started complaining about the fact that they got involved, and MVP started running his mouth, going, "You made it seem like Bobby Lashley couldn't handle Sheamus on his own. So how are you going to make this up to us?" So they decide they're going to challenge Drew McIntyre to a 2-on-1 match as a result of basically the entirety of the Hurt Business attacking Sheamus after the match. And Drew came out to help him, which is, an interesting little twist, kind of like respect for a worthy adversary, even if that worthy adversary is somebody who was once your friend of 20 years and stabbed you in the back over the WWE Championship. So they have the 2-on-1 match, and Drew gets a stipulation added to the WrestleMania match as a result of this 2-on-1 handicap. Basically, if he wins, Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin will be barred from ringside at WrestleMania, which, and he does win. And curiously, after that match, about 5-10 minutes later, when they come back from, I think it's like second segment after a commercial break, we see, and I just laughed at this. It's like we actually see Bobby Lashley and MVP now berating them for getting barred from ringside at WrestleMania. At which point, Bobby Lashley then goes into a random locker room, which is largely filled with the people who generally have been seen going after R-Truth to try to win the 24/7 championship from him, and go, "Hey, I'll pay you 10 grand or whatever the hell it was that he offered if you take out Drew McIntyre before WrestleMania." What? I'm sorry, just what? This is a guy who literally said, "Oh, I could have taken Sheamus fine, no problem, without any help from you guys." And now he's complaining that they're not going to be ringside for WrestleMania? So, wait, let me get this straight. They think he can take Sheamus, no problem, and was upset that Alexander and Benjamin got involved during that match, but he wants them involved at WrestleMania? I don't get it. Also, hey, to my buddies there, Marcus, and I guess I'm just going to call him Shadow because I never really got a better name for him at this point. Welcome to the chat. Welcome to the party. And again, I'm just a little confused by the overall situation with how they're dealing with this for WrestleMania. I'm very confused by this. I don't know what we're looking at. but we're looking at something here for WrestleMania. I've got no idea what the hell's going on here. So WrestleMania, the match between Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre, I want to see Drew reclaim the title, but at this point right now, it's a 50-50 toss-up. I can't call this one. I know who I'd like to see win, and again, that's Drew McIntyre, just because I'm sorry, Bobby Lashley has been boring as hell since he won the championship just really like a month and a half ago. And that's not necessarily saying that Bobby is naturally boring. He's had moments where he's been okay, but I don't like the fact that all of a sudden he's like this impenetrable monster that you can't hurt unless you're over 330 pounds. Because I'm sorry, it's like Riddle was actually holding his own for several weeks, even though he was not able to defeat Bobby Lashley. And then all of a sudden, Bobby, quote unquote, snaps and suddenly starts, utilizing the full Nelson, or as he calls it, the hurt lock on everybody. And he's like this. Again, they turned him back into a clone of Brock Lesnar mixed with the hairlessness of Goldberg. I've mentioned before, I don't like the fact that he was effectively a clone of Goldberg physically. I mean, obviously he's black, but, bald head, hyper ripped physique, and basically just wrestles in a similar manner to Lesnar and Goldberg. I didn't like Lesnar when he first showed up, but I mean, I was willing to give him a pass right up until that whole thing where he left to go play football and then literally said, yeah, I don't care about wrestling. I just want money. Okay, fine. But here's the thing. Lesnar kind of screwed the pooch on his own career and then got lucky with MMA, and then he keeps coming back, and WWE just keeps bending backwards for him, and I don't like it. Goldberg, I'm mildly less, annoyed by him, because when he shows up, I mean, at least he's doing it because he has a love of the game as much as he might want to make, a paycheck out of it. So there's that. But I don't like the fact that Lashley is basically a cross between Lesnar and Goldberg. I really don't. Like I said, I'd love to see McIntyre take the win here. I don't know if he's going to take the win here. I sincerely doubt it, as much as I hate to say that. But we're going to have to wait and see what happens. So then we've got Bad Bunny with Damian Priest versus The Miz with John Morrison. Yeah, I mean, the minute this match was announced, I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. Bad Bunny's getting the win, and it's going to be just like every other celebrity that we've had after WrestleMania 2, where literally if they're involved in a match, they're going over. Snooze City. I mean, I get it. Okay, Bad Bunny did a song based around Booker T. WWE liked it. They wanted to give him a nod. At the Royal Rumble, he wins a Grammy. Yay. I'll be honest, I'd never heard of the guy until the Royal Rumble. That's because I don't really follow the music scene. I just listen to whatever I like and then go from there. So now we got Damian Priest running around. We've got Bad Bunny having now held the 24/7 championship for a considerable amount of time, because Damian Priest was more or less just shielding him from R-Truth. And then all of a sudden he just randomly relinquishes the belt to R-Truth. Way to make your entire run pointless. I mean, to be fair, the 24/7 championship is a joke. I hate to say that, because, I mean, if they had done it right, they could have actually turned it into a more respectable version of the Hardcore Championship. Because I'll be honest, the Hardcore title, when it first came out, I mean, they had some great matches for that, even under the 24/7 clause, where the title would be up for grabs literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That was the entire gimmick of the Hardcore title in the late, I want to say like late 99 to early 2001 era, before the belt was ultimately unified with, of all things, the Intercontinental Championship, which itself was briefly unified with the World Heavyweight title, which was the former WCW World title, and then itself merged with the WWE title. It's a whole thing. So yeah, pointless. And I'm sorry, I'm pretty much predicting Bad Bunny here. I'd love to see Damian Priest get himself beat down by The Miz and John Morrison after the fact, just to lead them into a feud because they got to do something with them. So there's that. Night 2, Roman Reigns versus Edge. And this, of course, is going to be for the Universal Championship. Again, this is the same problem I have with the WWE title. It's too hard to call. I'd like to see Edge do it just because, again, the way they've been building it seems like this would be the logical payoff. And I mean, at this point, they don't really have anything else they can do, and they've got no place else they can go with Roman right now because he's largely beaten just about everybody. So we'll have to wait and see what's going on with that. So moving on, Asuka versus Rhea Ripley. Now, Rhea Ripley, I don't know how to pronounce it. She popped up on Monday Night Raw and immediately inserted herself into WrestleMania by taking Charlotte Flair's spot. Charlotte was actually supposed to be in this match. She's apparently out. She's caught the virus. She's caught COVID. But theoretically, depending, because she's been off like for the last 3-4 weeks, so I think she probably should be able to return relatively soon. She might be able to, in fact, return prior to WrestleMania, so we could see this turn into a triple threat. Remember, something very similar happened with Drew McIntyre. I'd like to see Asuka go over because she's had really bad luck at WrestleMania, and I want to see her actually get a win on the grandest stage of them all. However, they just introduced Rhea Ripley, so they might want to put the title on her. Again, this is one of those ones where the only thing I can do is say who I want to win and hope for the best. Finally, we've got The Fiend with Alexa Bliss in his corner versus Randy Orton. This is going to be a straight-up singles bout. Now, of course, for those of you who have seen The Fiend, you know that he's been radically redesigned. He's got this charred look to him. Basically, it kind of feels like they're channeling Kane in some regard. So I don't know how to feel about that. I'm not even sure that's Bray Wyatt in the costume right now. Just because he's wearing like gloves and most of his face is covered. He does appear to have Caucasian skin, and he's wearing a contact lens in one eye to indicate the character is blind in one eye. Again, I don't even know if this is Bray Wyatt, but it could be. With him returning, I do expect to see Randy Orton go down in this particular match. So the Fiend will have returned. Right now, the implication seems to be that Alexa Bliss is in control of the Fiend. So we've kind of got this weird parallel almost to The Undertaker and Paul Bearer. The difference, of course, being that Alexa is supposedly somebody who had been brainwashed or altered by the Fiend, and she's kind of gone even further than he has. So there's a whole thing there. Now, the two nights that I should say not nights, but the two matches that we don't know what night they're going to be on just yet. We got the New Day versus AJ and Omos, whatever, for the tag team titles. I hate to say this, but I kind of think we're going to see the New Day lose their titles just because Omos has not wrestled yet. But given his sheer size, I mean, he's about 7 feet, maybe a little over. And they've generally been depicting him as pretty much like Kane, The Undertaker, or Braun Strowman, or, at one point, or Bobby Lashley, the way he has been the last few weeks to a month, where he's largely impervious to pain and very little is going to hurt him. So I think they're going to have the belts go to AJ and Omos. I don't know how long that's going to last, or even how long they intend to have the belts on these two. But which makes me wonder why they took the belts off of the Hurt Business in the first place. Maybe they just didn't want to do heel versus heel because the audience would have turned on everybody. And yes, there's going to be a live audience at the show. Then we got Braun Strowman versus Shane McMahon. Shane McMahon faked a knee injury at Fastlane. As we know, the McMahons are notorious for pulling stunts like this. Granted, usually more Shane than Vince, because he's pulled stunts like that in the past. although not necessarily of the exact same type. Then we have, Braun Strowman on the other side of this. Shane typically does not win at WrestleMania, but I do expect some kind of shenanigans to happen this year. Now, again, this is another one where I think it's a 50-50 toss-up. Just entirely depends on where they want to go with this. They've only been doing this for about a couple of weeks, and I could see them if they did this right, if they played their cards right, this could go all the way to SummerSlam as a feud. So if Shane loses, I could see him starting to try to harass Braun and have them have a blowout match at SummerSlam or even the Survivor Series. If Shane wins, I definitely see Braun, pursuing Shane at least until SummerSlam to get revenge. So we'll have to wait and see where things go. I do expect that there's going to be at least another 2 or 3 matches added to WrestleMania before this is done, because there's only 8 matches here, and WrestleMania is typically a 3 to 4 hour show. It is the biggest show on their calendar outside of Tribute to the Troops. So I do expect for there to be other individuals added. So, actually, this is a point that's being brought up here. Bo Dallas and Bray Wyatt are brothers in real life. They are the sons of Erwin R. Shyster, a.k.a. Mike Rotundo. So that is fully possible. Also, for anybody who is here watching the show, please hit that like and subscribe button. That's going to help me out a lot with the algorithm, and I'm really going to be, hopeful for, the channel to grow more and more. I'm unfortunately not at the point where I can take super chats yet, and I don't know why. I'm not sure if that has to do with the monetization stuff that will happen every so often with YouTube. But, I mean, if I can get that set up at some point where that can happen, great. We'll see what happens. Moving on. So I got a chance to watch season 8, episode 13 of Ruby. And, spoilers for anybody who has not seen the show yet. Yang appears to have taken a very, very heavy-duty header. To the point that, right now they're trying to play it off as, oh, she's dead. I doubt it. I really doubt that they're going to kill her off. 2 reasons. 1, she is one of the title characters. And 2, considering how much they've been trying to ham-fist Blake and Yang as a romantic couple just to pander to a very small subsection of the fandom, I really don't think they're going to do that, because if it turns out they did, it's going to be like, oh, how dare you kill off this woman when she was being depicted as being in a lesbian relationship. I fully see that happening. I fully see fans getting on their ass about that. So, again, if you're expecting, holy crap, they killed off a main character, no, they did not. They pulled this fake out before in season 5. When it looked like Weiss had just been run through by a spear by Cinder that was going to be fatal. And, that is literally not even what they did. They literally just did it to unlock John's semblance and have him heal her and bring her back into the fight. Is Yang going to show up immediately after supposedly, quote-unquote, dying? They may do that to hint at what could be coming in season 9. They have hinted in the past there's a detour they want to take before they go to Vacuo. We'll have to see what happens there. What is this? If it spites Twitter, I do it. Well, yeah. That spiting Twitter is one thing, but I really don't think they're going to do that, because these guys think that Twitter is the real world. They really, really, really like the people over on Twitter, because, again, they're the ones that they appealed to when they started hand-fisting the whole Blake and Yang as a couple thing after several seasons of building Blake and Son. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But the idea is, right now, at least the theory that's currently prevalent in the fandom is, well, they mentioned at one point a fairy tale of, quote unquote, the girl who fell through the world. Now, this could be a case of Yang getting thrown into an alternate reality or sent to another planet. This could be her being thrown back through time. Now, one thing that was brought up by another channel that I watch only once in a great while. I used to be on their Discord until it turned out they just don't like having like opinions that challenge them. But one of them one of the people on there, who I'm still on relatively good terms with, brought up the point that there is an interesting setup in the opener for season 8, the actual opening sequence, that seems to depict all of Team Ruby falling into the same abyss around that elevator system or passageway system, whatever you want to call it, that was created in episode 12 and then put into use in episode 13. So one of the warnings that they were given was don't fall off the pathway. So we don't know anything about who the girl who fell through the world is. Could this be Salem? Maybe. Could this be a reference to a time-traveling Yang? Maybe. Could this be a reference to Team Ruby following her and somebody else, in that group is, quote-unquote, the girl who fell through the world? Anything is possible. And indeed, we don't know what's going to happen until we get to, first off, I think we're supposed to get the finale this Saturday. And then season 9, I think they've said, is going to be a little longer. It's either season 9 is going to be a little longer or season 8 was supposed to be longer. I forget which one it was, but it was mentioned at New York Comic Con 2 years ago. And of course, we didn't have anything going on last year because they went virtual due to the pandemic. Good news on that front, by the way. If you are a fan of New York Comic Con right now, the answer is tentatively yes to them doing a physical show this year. I'm praying for that, fingers crossed. And we'll have to see if I can even get in. I'm kind of hoping I can. So then we have a little bit more information about what's going on in the world of anime. First off, all the credit in the world to Neon and Geeky Sparkles of Clownfish TV. They have brought up yet another bit of news being broadcast on YouTube, I think directly from them for the first time, period, on YouTube, out of like the pop culture YouTubers. We talked a while back, or rather they talked a while back, about the sale of Crunchyroll to Sony. Well, apparently that is being delayed. Now, apparently the money, I think, has already been exchanged between Sony to Warner Media, but there's apparently a government probe right now into whether or not this indicates a monopoly or what have you. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there. At this point, I mean, if this is an antitrust thing and they actually do something about it, I'll be absolutely amazed. Whether or not we will know anything about that is going to be in the next few weeks, maybe next few months. We don't know how long this probe will take, but we do know that at this point there is a possibility that the deal may not go through due to the whole antitrust and anti-monopoly laws are concerned. Now, if that's the case, that theoretically means that Verve will continue, I would assume, to run Crunchyroll, to run High Dive as streaming channels, along with Verve Select and a few other things like Mondo and Cartoon Hangover. But if Warner Brothers is not able to sell Crunchyroll, which, and again, I think that includes Verve, to Sony, that leads to a very interesting question. Will it get rolled into HBO Max? That would be the next most logical thing. So remember, they also have Rooster Teeth still on this platform. They still own Rooster Teeth, but Rooster Teeth is still on the Verve platform, which is a multi-streaming site. Again, Crunchyroll, High Dive, Rooster Teeth, Cartoon Mondo or Cartoon Hangover, Mondo, and Verve Select. So what that means, I don't know. Now, if the sale goes through, then there's a good possibility that we will see Funimation join Verve. Again, I don't know if Verve is actually part of the sale. However, considering they are owned by the same company and that Verve utilizes Crunchyroll as one of a number of streaming channels, I don't know what's going to happen there. And yeah, I'll be honest, I kind of hope it doesn't go through either. So there's that. But, I mean, it is what it is. And we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. For those of you who have been wondering, by the way, as to why I haven't put up any kind of icon whenever I do a video streaming, I honestly don't know how to do that. I was going to use the icon that I use for my watermark and also for, just my icon while I'm speaking until I can actually get a halfway decent web camera. But for some reason, YouTube will not let me use the full image for the icon for when I'm going to do the streaming. By the way, for those who are curious about the watermark, that was done for me by a very good friend and very talented artist called Miori, Miiyyori. She does some streaming on Twitch. I will put that up actually, so that this way you can all give her some love and give her some follows. She's got a lot of good artwork that you can actually take a look at. There's a lot of stuff you can do with that whole series, and not series, but the entirety of her artwork. She does do gaming streaming as well, and she also has an account on. She has 2 art accounts that I'm aware of. One is on DeviantArt, and the other's on FurAffinity.net. So again, go to her. She's streaming right now, actually. So she does game streaming. She does art streaming. Go over to her Twitch. Tell her Warwolf sent you. Subscribe, follow, give her some love. She's a really talented artist. She's a real sweetheart, and she's always been very nice to pretty much all of her customers, unless they really just drive her up the wall. And I'll be honest. I mean, I've known her for a good 4 or 5 years. I mean, you couldn't ask for a nicer person to commission artwork from her. Her rates are reasonable. I mean, I think she's increased them a little bit recently, but overall, they're reasonable. And her artwork was great to begin with when I first started getting artwork from her a while back. It's gotten better by leaps and bounds ever since. So that little plug out of the way. That is the young woman who did the watermark for me. And of course, I've been using, well, not the watermark, but the icon, which I'm using as a watermark. So, let's see, I will also try to get her her Fur Affinity and DeviantArt accounts up here. Now, be warned, warning, potential not safe for work stuff is in here. Oop. So here are, there we go. Here's the first one, and give me a minute, and I will see about finding her other one. Give me just a moment, and here we go. And I think this is her, unless she has completely... Yeah, nope, we're good. We are good. Excellent. So here's the other one. And there you go. Again, she's got decent rates. Her artwork I like quite a bit. Granted, I'm biased because I've gotten some great work from her. But, I mean, you can't go wrong with this woman's artwork. And, every little bit helps. And, of course, we're all struggling in this time of the pandemic. So, again, right now I do believe her commissions are closed. But subscribe to her, her for Affinity, account, or I should say put it on watch. Same thing with DeviantArt. And, just wait and see when the next time she opens up is. She gives, again, decent rates. She has been in a situation where if she gets behind on her queue and it takes a while, she'll always, touch base with us. She's done so with me, a couple of times, including, in the last, basically 6 months. At one point, I had gotten something, put in for around December, things being as crazy as they were around the holidays. She kept, touching base with me and made sure that I was aware of what was going on with the work, and even was willing to do a variation on basically just saying, hey, do you want me to do X, Y, and Z as something, in the future? I'll let you know when I open up commissions again. So she was willing to basically say, hey, I'm running a little behind. Once I open commissions again, is there anything you might be interested in? And if so, let me know, and I'll get back to you on a price. So honestly, that was great to me. This was a couple of years ago. In fact, another one again earlier this year, she was a little bit behind, and she just kept me in the loop. So again, I do recommend her. And she does more than just anthropomorphic characters. She does humans, she does demons, etc., etc. I believe she's also part of an esports team, eBay, and no, not like the auction site, EBAE. So again, also on Twitch. I don't have the link off the top of my head. I will look for that next time. But again, go give them some love. Tell them Warwolf sent you. Well, they don't know me as well as Miori does, but she knows me. So if she happens to be streaming with them at the time, at least, she'll know, who sent you guys along. Moving on to my own work regarding to my book. As I've mentioned before, I am slowly closing in on the end of this book. So I'm on basically chapter 11, and, it's going to be a good, maybe 200 odd pages. And that's by by normal size letter of 8.5 by 11. I don't know what's going to come down to when that's dropped down to industry standard, which is 6 by 9. I've actually got to see how that works with Microsoft Word. I know at one point that was something they would directly show you what it would be once you change the paper size. I don't know if they still do that right now. Largely because I haven't really checked. I'll be honest, I kind of missed the 2002 edition of Microsoft Word. I miss Word being a free program, honestly. This, by the way, is the reason why people have been charged for the use of Microsoft Word. I don't know what company it was, but some other company that had a word processor apparently got pissed over the fact that Microsoft Word was included with most computers that ran Windows. Granted, you had to install it off of a disk most often, but it was still free, and it came with the system. Because they're like, oh, well, you're basically denying competition, and it's like, not really. Just because you have Microsoft on Microsoft Word on a Microsoft computer doesn't mean you are required to use it. Bear in mind, Microsoft still has a stripped down version of Word on the operating system called WordPad, which literally has always just been a stripped down version of Word. And again, you're not required to use it. You never have been, and I sincerely doubt you ever will be. So I found that really hilarious and stupid. But to be fair, Microsoft found a way to monetize it. So I'm sure in that regard, while they're annoyed that they have to hear complaints about, having customers have to pay for this service, at the same time, they're getting some monetary compensation. So, because with Word, there are free alternatives. There's LibreOffice is the big one. Actually, that's the only one off the top of my head I really know. But there are others like Google Docs, which isn't technically, a direct one-to-one. But I mean, it's free, so you certainly have that as an option. There are other paid options out there, such as Corel's WordPerfect Office or WordPerfect. I think they're just calling it WordPerfect now. But there are other options. You don't have to get Microsoft, although it is still the the industry standard word processor. And to me, like, the downside to it is, like, if you want to get Microsoft Word, there's really only a couple ways to do it, and they all require you to end up getting the entirety of the Microsoft Works suite. I'll tell you right now, I don't know what Microsoft Access is, and I don't use it. Simply because A, I don't really have to, and B, I have no idea what I'm doing with it. I don't use Excel because I don't use spreadsheets. I don't really use any of the Microsoft stuff other than really Word. So I mean, you got all this stuff here that I'm never going to use. From the Office suite. I mean, I don't use PowerPoint. I don't use Publisher. I don't use Outlook. So, I mean, what is the point of this? I don't know. The good part of this, though, the one upside that I will say about this is, if you do have Microsoft Word, at least if you got it through Microsoft 365, apparently you can get Word's mobile app on your phone and or tablet, and I think at least it might just be the phone. But at least with the phone, it doesn't count against the amount of accounts, or not accounts, but the amount of devices you can use. You basically get it for free. So that I do like. I use Microsoft Office 365, as do a lot of people. But I do have one or two alternatives just in case, God forbid, something goes wrong with Microsoft Word. 1 second here. Sorry about that. Anyway, so moving right along in regards to the subject of my book. As I said, I'm coming down to the wire on here. My next issue is then going to be finding a decent editor. The editor I had been working with was somebody that I had met through fanfiction.net, because yes, I still read fanfics. I still occasionally write them. And, I'll be honest, one day I would love to see fanfics of my work on fanfiction.net. I couldn't legally read them unless the series was done, just because, I don't want to be accused of stealing anybody's ideas if they come up with something for a fanfic. However, she's just vanished off the face of the planet, it seems like. I used to be in contact with her on Discord. I used to be in contact with her on Skype whenever Discord's microphone interface wasn't working. She has vanished completely. I don't know what happened to her. But again, I mean, she's gone, flat out gone. Give me a minute here. I've got to put on a bandage. I've got a cut on my thumb. Kind of a weird thing to say, but it's it's the truth. So at that point, once I get done with the book, I'm going to do the best editing job I can, and then try to find a professional editor and have them, really give the thing a true overhaul. Because one of the things that I have found is it's probably more likely a good idea to have an editor go over your work before you submit to an agent or something. I mean, that's just my take on it. I mean, I could be wrong about this, but I mean, who knows? So that's my plan. Is I'm gonna try to get an editor in on this before I submit it to a literary agent, and pray that somebody bites on that. Now, they probably won't, because again, I'll admit it's a niche story. But I can live with that. And, for me, it's like, I'm not looking to be the next Stephen King. I'm not looking to be the next J.K. Rowling. I'm not even looking to be the next Dean Koontz. These guys are all people who became legendary in their own time. I mean, King's been going on for a long time, like, 50, 60 years at this point. Dean Koontz, he's relatively more recent in the world of, like, thriller and horror, but he's got his charms, and there's so many other, artists out there in the literary world who really just kind of made their own way. And I'm going to have to do the same thing. And this is something I'm going to say to any and all writers out there. Don't try to be the next Stephen King. Don't try to be the next J.K. Rowling. Don't try to be the next Dean Koontz or James Patterson or whatever. You never want to be the next X, all right? You never want to be the next, this author or that author or what. What you want to be is the first you, all right? Because if you try to be somebody else in the writing game, you're going to blow it because people are just going to compare you to whoever it is you're trying to emulate or imitate. Now, some of your writing may sound similar to another person's writing. That could happen. Somebody might find a similarity in the way you write to the way somebody else writes. And that, more than likely, will probably be coincidental. If you're trying to just be yourself. And you want people to see your characters, to see your voice as a writer, and to see your story. So again, if you want to shoot for fame and fortune, have at it, but do it by being the best writer you can be as yourself. Don't try to be the next Stephen King, Rowling, Koontz, Patterson. Don't even try to be R.L. Stein. If you're trying to go like young adult or whatever, whether you do like Fear Street or Goosebumps or whatever, it's like, be you. You're the only one who can tell the stories you want to write. And I'm going to say this again, be yourself and just be who you are. Give me a moment, folks. I just realized I haven't got my decent mic in yet. Let me put this one in. There we go. I don't know if that's actually working properly, so give me a moment here to check. Switch over. And there we go. Okay, that should be working. I just realized I wasn't even using the regular microphone that I normally use here. Let me know if that sounds better or worse in the chat if you happen to be listening and you can tell the difference. I didn't even realize I'd screwed that up. Yeah, go figure on that one. Anyway, long story short, as I've already said, don't try to be another writer when you're writing. Be yourself. Now, if you want to get help from other writers in making yourself a better writer, great. Reach out to other writers who are willing to reach out to you. I cannot stress that enough. I have done that myself. It's kind of worked and kind of not. So, it is what it is. If you happen to find a really good writing group and all, then you've done it. Great. Okay, so it doesn't sound all that different. Okay, cool. Does it sound like, did my voice drop out at any time, in the last couple of things here from the microphone or no? Because, if it worked fine, that's great. That means I can use my onboard microphone as well as my snowball. But let me know. Because if I have any dropouts, I want to know where that is. Anyway, speaking of, books. Now, again, people say, like, why do you write? A lot of people say I write because, I want to be rich or this or that. Let me point out something to you. If you think you're going to be rich and famous off your writing, this is hella rare. Now, don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean you can't make a living at your writing. But if you're looking to become like super rich and super famous, like get involved in Hollywood and this and that, I'm going to tell you right now, don't hold your breath. Do not hold your breath on that. Because honestly, it's very rare. Stephen King has been at this for a long time. And he lucked out. I think one of the first movies that was adapted from his works was, actually, I think like the first two were Carrie and The Shining. And I could be wrong about The Shining, but I know Carrie is one of his earliest adaptations. He wrote the original book, Carrie. Actually, I'm not even sure when he wrote that. Give me just a moment. But I want to say it's sometime in the late 60s to early 70s. And he almost immediately managed to get an adaptation in 1976. And yeah, all right, so here we go. The novel was made in 74. The novel for Carrie was in 74, and it is adapted in 76. So, I mean, that's really an incredible turnaround. That is really an incredible turnaround. And when you get right down to it, that is not going to happen with most writers. Now, does that necessarily mean your writing is bad? Hell no. Absolutely not. Your writing, especially if you get as much polish on it and as much practice on it as you can, is going to be fine. Especially if you practice at it. The old adage, practice makes perfect. I mean, I can't say it any better than that. But again, if you're looking to get into Hollywood, if you're looking to get these multi-million-dollar film deals, you're probably going to be waiting for a very long time. King was a major exception to this idea to be adapted that quickly for any of his works. I mean, and he's got some pretty decent works stretching back. Let me just look at his bibliography here, because I mean, he's got a pretty good thing here. Let's see, the Stephen King bibliography. His earliest book, his first actually is Carrie in 74, and he got that adapted ridiculously quickly. But that was because it was at a time when the idea of adapting books was just starting to become in vogue, and he was one of those rare instances where it's like, hey, we've got something we can work with. And his first 3 books were adapted, but they were adapted in different ways. You have Carrie was adapted into a film in 76 and had a couple of remakes after that. You had Salem's Lot, which was written in 75. And it ended up, here's the kicker about Salem's Lot. The book was written in 75, and then it won 2 different awards well after its publication. It was nominated for the World Fantasy Award in 1976 and the Locus Award for the all-time best fantasy novel in 1987. Now, bear in mind that although this was adapted into a feature film in the early 2000s, this was basically something where in 75 we got the book, in 79 we got the TV miniseries. In 1987 we got the sequel, A Return to Salem's Lot, and then in 2004 we got a television movie from Rob Lowe. Now, Castle Rock is apparently let me see here. 2019. New Line Cinema announced that it was going to do a new film based on Salem's Lot. I'm very curious to see how they're going to handle this. They did great with parts 1 and 2 of It. And I'm sure, again, that King got a decent payout for it. But again, if you're expecting this kind of behavior from Hollywood, don't. Just don't. Because again, most books, they're going to find their audience, they're going to find a dedicated fan base, and that includes yours, whoever you may be out there watching this stream. But you are not necessarily going to get that kind of recognition that some other authors will. In fact, some of the authors that have been adapted have, all right, hey, take care, Marcus. Take care, and, nice having you here. So, again, your work will find an audience if you do your best to make your story the best it can be. But don't expect to end up getting Hollywood to look at you and go, hey, we want to make millions of dollars off your work. If you're doing that as the reason to write, you're screwed right out of the gate. Perfectly screwed. Because if you're writing for the sake of getting into Hollywood, especially these days, Hollywood is going to eat you up and spit you out. I'm sorry, it just is. Especially when it comes to your writing, because if you're writing just for fame and fortune, it's going to show in the writing, and you're probably going to get trounced by a lot of readers. You may find a dedicated fan base. You really might. But if your whole purpose in writing is, I want to be, adapted by Hollywood. Don't get me wrong. Every writer would love to see their work adapted, I think, in some way or another, whether that be as a comic, a video game, a movie, a TV series, etc., etc. I will be honest with you. I would love to see my work adapted into another medium, but I know for a fact it's never going to happen, probably until after I'm dead, if it ever happens at all. My whole point is I want to put out the best stories I can because I want to write stories that I want to see. And that's really who your first audience is going to be, by the way. This is a straight up bit for you readers out there and writers out there, especially the writers, and especially writers who are trying to figure out what to write. So let me give you a bit of advice that I kind of just stumbled onto my own realization for this. Don't try to write what you think other people want to see. Just don't. All right? Because if you're writing for other people, eventually you're going to hate what you're writing. Because you're trying to live up to other people's expectations of what they think you should be writing about. And this is especially true for anybody who's already written a book and gotten it out there. Write the stories you want to read. Because if you're out there and you're looking for a story that has certain elements that just aren't there, write them yourself. Write them yourself. Get them published, whether you do it through a traditional publishing house or whether you go through self-publishing, whether that be Amazon, a local bookstore like the one we got here, which has got its own printing arm, or any other number of self-publishing services. But do your research on those self-publishing services, so this way you're not getting scammed. But either way, the first person you write for as an author is going to be you. What story do you want to see on paper? And more to the point, where is that story in your head? And where are those characters in your mind? All right, because the story in your head and the characters in your mind aren't necessarily the same thing. You could have a story and you can have several different characters in your mind. But which ones fit the story? And sometimes it's the other way around. How does the setting feel with the characters that you have in your mind? These are things you do have to think about. Make sure that you have everything set, or at least have a general idea. Now, I know some people are what they call planners. They will plan out every detail of their book and just go along the points. And then they have what they call, quote unquote, pantsers. Now, this is people who just write by the seat of their pants. I'm kind of a mixture of both. I'm a plantser. I plan a little bit, and sometimes I go, by ear. What I'll do is I'll come up with a general hanging outline and then just develop based on that. All right. So something may change in the course of what I wanted to do because the characters are saying, no, you should be doing this instead. And yes, you will find instances where your characters are telling you what to do. This is something that happens with, even if the book is horrible, you will sometimes find instances where your characters are leading you into a different path from where you initially thought you were going to go. And you may still get where you wanted to go, but you'll be getting it there by a different route. I've had this happen to me a couple times already in the book. I like it. It's just one of those ideas. Sometimes a good character, or even just a character who won't shut up, when you're writing them, saying, no, I would be doing this. I would think this. I would do this. I would say this. Let your characters drive you as much as you drive your characters. That's another piece of advice I will give you. Let your characters drive you as much as you drive your characters. Your characters are going to be important. and your character's setting, their world, their plot, the conflict that drives the story, they're all going to be important. But your characters, if they really do have an influence on you, and they say, like, do this, do this, do this, give it a shot. I mean, nobody's going to see that early draft or even second draft, third draft, whatever, except you. You are the one who's going to see that. And if your characters say, this is what I would do, I mean, listen to your characters. I know that sounds like a weird idea. It sounds like something a crazy man would say. But no, I'm dead serious. Your writing is going to develop as you go. But one thing that will also happen is your characters will start to influence your writing. Because if you know your characters well enough, then you know that they're going to start talking back to you while you're writing the course of the book. And I don't mean literally talking back to you. I'm not going to say like they're going to pop up next to you and say, do this, do this, do this. No, in your mind's eye, if you imagine what your character would say or do or think, I mean, you might think your character would go one way, but that character may push back on where you think that character should go or do or say or think, and substitute its own desires, in the sense that you'll get this idea of like, well, no, the character wouldn't say, do, or think that. He would say this, this, and this instead. Or he would do this, or he would go here instead of going where I wanted him to go. There are ways to let your character drive you. One of the biggest examples I can think of is Robert E. Howard, the man who wrote the Conan the Barbarian series, and also, by the way, created Red Sonja, but as a very different character to the one that we know today. I mean, you want to talk about Red Sonja, there's a Midnight's Edge video regarding her. Give me a minute. Let me see if I can find that video. I will put up a link to that. Edge, Red Sonja. And let's see. Yes, okay. So here is the link, I think, that deals with this. And it actually, does detail a little bit about Red Sonja's whole issue with basically be stuck in development hell for a long time. So it'll be interesting to see what's going on with Red Sonja, of course. But getting back to Conan, Robert E. Howard at one point said that he was constantly imagining Conan literally looming over him and demanding that he write his stories. Now, I don't think he meant this literally, but again, sometimes a character just will not get out of your head unless you do something with them. This is the way it was for the main character of my book, who is, of course, Warwolf, and of course, you're seeing a general idea of what he's going to look like in the book. He's been in my head since 1993. He originally had a different name. He's gone through actually a couple of name changes. And he was just a character I had to get out of my head. And the only way I could think of to do it was start writing about him. You may see that with other characters that you come up with. And if that does happen, you may see instances where that character will tell you how to write the story. This, again, seems to be something that happened with Robert E. Howard. Because, again, he made the same, that whole thing is like Robert E. Howard said, Conan was basically looming over him that entire time and just would not get out of his head. So it was one of those weird things. And I think it's going to be something that will come up as you write. You may find that your characters start writing you in the sense that they're basically taking control of what you're writing. Let it happen. If it turns out you don't like it, you can always go back and try to do it the way you wanted to. But more often than not, if you've got a character in your head, he's developed enough, or she's developed enough, or they're developed enough, or whatever, whether it's one person, two people, whatever, you can do this. You can let these people dictate the story because they're going to help you along. And I know I'm rambling here. I know this sounds ridiculous. But the truth is, it's the only way I can think of to put this. And literally, it's just one of those things where all I can do is say, let your characters drive the story. If there's times where it feels like your characters are pulling you in a different direction from where you want to go, follow where they go. See what comes up. And again, if you don't like it, you can always go back and change things around. But more often than not, your characters are going to take you where you need to go in that story. You may not think that it's where you need to go, but by the end of it, you're probably going to realize, yeah, that kind of works. I mean, and this is just personal. This is just personal advice from me. I am not, an established expert in the field. I'm just somebody who's writing because, damn it, I want to, and because I want to sell my stories to people out there, and hopefully they'll enjoy them. Sure, a lot of people out there want to make money. So do I. A lot of people out there would love to see their work adapted into other media. So would I. But I'm not writing for that to be what happens. I'm writing because it's what I do. I'd love to get published through a traditional publishing house. May not happen for a good while, if at all. And we'll have to wait and see what happens. Either way, my advice to you as a writer, to all you writers, let your story be dictated by your characters as much as it's dictated by you. And if your characters start fighting you, and I've had this happen where my characters, I wanted to do something and my characters were just fighting me every step of the way and just causing writer's block because they're like, no, do this, do this, do this. Sometimes the best thing to do is just do it. Just go where your characters want to go. Do what the characters want to do. And 9 times out of 10, it may turn out to be better than what you originally had planned. And if it turns out it's that 10th time, hey, more power to you. You know more than your characters in that instance. Make use of it. In any case, it's getting on 9 o'clock Eastern here. I don't really think there's too many people else watching right now. And I've kind of run out of things to say. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I've got here. And you guys take care. I'll catch you next time, whenever that be. And as they used to say at the end of the page of Marvel's Godzillagrams, yes, that was what they called the letters page for Godzilla King of the Monsters when they had the series from 1977 to 1979, be good.